beneath the restless waves of the Atlantic, where sunlight never reaches and the pressure could crush steel like paper, there exists a realm untouched by human curiosity. Here, colossal mountains rise from the seabed, sculpted not by fire or tectonic fury, but by violent underwater avalanches, landslides that have whispered secrets for millennia. These hidden peaks, cloaked in darkness and mystery, are monuments to nature's raw, untamed power, silent witnesses to a world where time moves differently, where currents carve canyons and shadows conceal stories older than civilization itself. Imagine descending into this abyss, where every crevice holds a forgotten memory. Every slope hints at cataclysms that reshaped the Atlantic from the ocean floor upward. The Titanic, a story etched in human tragedy, rests not only in history books, but is enmeshed in this labyrinth of submerged peaks and valleys, a silent testament to the ocean's unyielding memory. What secrets lie trapped in these underwater mountains? What echoes of collapse, of landslides, of unimaginable force remain buried beneath layers of sediment, waiting for the daring to uncover them? This is not just exploration. This is a journey into the unseen, where each plunge into the darkness offers both revelation and awe, confrontation with a world we scarcely understand, yet one that shaped the very waters above. Like the abyss itself, this story is immense, enigmatic, and unforgettable. If you crave the unseen, the mysterious, and the monumental, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to continue this descent into the Atlantic's hidden heart. Beneath the rolling waves of the North Atlantic, where the surface sun is a distant memory, the ocean plunges into a darkness so profound it seems almost sentient. The water, cold and unyielding, presses from every side, a constant, invisible weight that reminds any intruder of their fragility. Here, light has long since surrendered its dominion, leaving the abyss in a timeless shade of twilight, punctuated only by the faint bioluminescent glimmers of creatures adapted to a world without day. As the currents move, subtle yet inexorable, they brush against submerged ridges and cliff-silent monuments to forces that were, and remain, colossal. In this hidden world, the concept of scale warps. What seems immense on the surface, a ship, a whale, a storm, becomes trivial when measured against the titanic contours of the ocean floor. The seabed is neither empty nor uniform. It stretches in unbroken plains, but these plains are punctuated by mountains that rise like the spires of a drowned cathedral. Each peak is the aftermath of colossal underwater avalanches, landslides that have sheared the earth apart and rearranged it with a violence both sudden and inexorable. Sediment, rock, and debris have cascaded in unstoppable flows, carving valleys, gouging slopes, and piling into jagged heights that would dwarf any mountain on land. The sheer magnitude of these structures is almost incomprehensible. Yet they are not chaotic, for in the chaos lies a strange order. Currents swirl around them, shaping the fine grains of sediment into ripples that whisper of invisible storms and hidden rhythms. Every layer tells a story of collapse, of pressure, of time measured not in years but in millennia. Descending into this abyss, one becomes acutely aware of the silence. It is not merely the absence of sound. It is the presence of stillness so profound that even the movement of water feels sacred. The silence itself seems to hum with memory, carrying the weight of events that reshaped the Atlantic long before humans first gazed upon its surface. Landslides that moved entire mountains in moments now lie fossilized in sedimentary layers, their violence frozen in time. One can almost imagine the roar of displaced water, the grinding friction of rock against rock, the sudden, almost imperceptible tremors that shook the sea. And yet now the remnants are calm. The mountains stand in solemn repose, their jagged silhouettes casting shadowy impressions across the dark ocean floor. It is a beauty that is terrifying in its scale, a reminder that the abyss is not passive, it is alive with memory. The architecture of these submerged peaks is a testament to both destruction and creation. In some places, cliffs plunge straight into valleys carved by ancient currents, their surfaces polished and striated by the endless abrasion of sand and silt. Elsewhere, ridges curl like frozen waves, evidence of sediment flows that, in a single catastrophic event, could bury vast stretches of the ocean floor. Geologists call these formations mass transport deposits, but the term feels clinical in the face of their drama. They are more than sediment. They are sculptures of upheaval, testimony to the ocean's capacity for both violence and artistry. One can imagine the initial collapse, the trembling sea, the roar that would have echoed through thousands of meters of water, reshaping everything in its path. It is a scale of transformation that dwarfs any surface disaster, yet it leaves behind a landscape of intricate detail, a labyrinthine terrain that invites both study and awe. As the descent continues, the interplay of light and shadow, however faint, reveals details that seem almost surreal. The edges of the mountains glint faintly as if dusted with silver, an effect caused by the bioluminescent organisms clinging to rocks and sediments. These tiny lights, flickering like stars in a perpetual night, give shape to the contours, highlighting overhangs and crevices that might otherwise be lost in the dark. In the silence, every movement is exaggerated. The slow sway of a current, the gentle fall of sediment, the faint scrape of a rock against another. The abyss feels aware, responsive to the presence of an observer, and in its immensity, it imposes a kind of humility that is almost spiritual. One begins to perceive not merely the structures themselves, but the vast timeline they embody, the slow, unrelenting passage of ages that sculpted them, the violent moments that redefined them, and the eternal stillness that now surrounds them. Yet the abyss is not static. Even in this apparent calm, the ocean moves with a deliberate, patient power. Currents carry fine particles of sediment across the mountains, smoothing some surfaces, exposing others, constantly reshaping the terrain at a rate imperceptible to the human eye. These movements are subtle but unending, a reminder that the ocean floor is never truly at rest. In the deep, life has adapted to these conditions, though it is sparse and alien. Small crustaceans, blind fish, and other creatures navigate the darkness, inhabiting cracks and crevices, eking out an existence amid the silence of Titanic stone. Their presence is a quiet counterpoint to the monumental scale of the landscape, a reminder that even in the vast emptiness of the abyss, life persists, fragile yet resilient, whispering of continuity amid the chaos of millennia. It is here, among these shadowed peaks, that the true nature of the Atlantic becomes apparent. The ocean, often perceived from the surface as endless blue, is revealed to be a layered world of extremes. Above, storms rage and ships traverse the waves. Below, landslides carve mountains, currents flow like invisible rivers, and life clings to existence in perpetual darkness. Every mountain, every ridge, every slope holds the imprint of forces far beyond human comprehension. The abyss is a library of memory, where each layer of sediment records a chapter of geological history, each valley a testament to the immense power of water, gravity, and time. And in this silence, one senses the broader story, the narrative that stretches from the first collapse of rock to the quiet present, a story that is still unfolding. The submerged mountains of the Atlantic are not relics frozen in time. They are active participants in a world of ongoing transformation. Landslides continue to shape the terrain, though at intervals measured in centuries rather than seconds. Currents redistribute sediments, and life, however sparse, continues to navigate the labyrinthine slopes. The abyss, in all its majesty and terror, is both a record and a reminder that beneath the waves lies a realm of forces far older, far larger, and far more mysterious than anything humanity can command or fully comprehend. As the descent grows deeper, The mountains of sediment and rock reveal details too vast and intricate to be captured by any map or sonar scan. Here, in the unbroken darkness, the seabed twists like a cathedral frozen in time, each ridge and valley meticulously carved by ancient landslides, each slope a testament to forces that no human eye has witnessed. The scale of these formations defies imagination. Walls hundreds of meters tall, cliffs that rise from plains of sediment as if erupting from the very heart of the earth. Every surface bears the scars of movement, the fingerprints of collapse, subtle grooves that hint at the immense energy once released in moments of catastrophic instability. The mechanics of these underwater avalanches are as mesmerizing as they are violent. When sediment builds too high on the continental slope, gravity eventually overcomes cohesion, and entire masses of rock and mud collapse, hurtling down into the abyss with devastating speed. The displaced materials carve trenches that stretch for kilometers, piling debris into jagged mountains that loom in silence long after the storm has passed. These are not singular events. The Atlantic seabed has been shaped by countless collapses over millions of years, each layer of sediment a page in a geological chronicle, each peak and valley a frozen echo of upheaval. In this way, the mountains are storytellers, chronicling events far beyond the reach of human memory. Descending further, the pressure intensifies, an invisible hand that squeezes everything in its path. The water is cold, near freezing, and every movement feels heavy, measured against the constant force pressing from above. Yet even in this extreme environment, there is motion, subtle and persistent. Fine sediments drift like smoke through narrow canyons, currents carve new pathways, and the surfaces of mountains shift imperceptibly. It is a world defined by contrast, immense stillness punctuated by minute, ongoing change. These minute adjustments, though invisible to the casual observer, are crucial to understanding the abyss as a living system, one that responds to forces both massive and subtle with equal fidelity. The interplay of light and shadow, however faint, continues to reveal the depth and drama of this environment. Bioluminescent organisms flicker along the slopes, highlighting overhangs and jagged peaks, casting an ethereal glow over the barren landscape. These tiny lights transform the darkness into a moving tapestry, drawing attention to details that might otherwise be lost: sediment striations, the ripple marks of ancient currents, the abrupt edges where massive slides once sheared away entire sections of the seabed. It is a world that is both terrifying and mesmerizing, one where beauty and danger coexist in perfect, haunting symmetry. The abyss is a place where scale is relative, where the smallest creature may navigate the terrain with as much risk as a massive underwater landslide imposes. It is impossible to consider the abyss without acknowledging its temporal depth. While humans measure life in decades, centuries at most, the Atlantic has been sculpted over millions of years. Each mountain is older than entire civilizations, each ridge older than recorded history. Landslides that may have seemed instantaneous to the rocks themselves occurred over centuries in the broader geological sense. Yet their impact reshaped entire regions, creating peaks that now rise silently into the darkness. In these mountains, time is a tangible presence, a slow and relentless force that continues to act even as we watch. Every layer of sediment, every displaced boulder, every carved canyon is a reminder that the earth is patient, capable of monumental change without the need for haste. Despite the alien nature of this environment, there is a strange familiarity here. The patterns of collapse, the flow of sediments, even the formation of valleys and cliffs echo processes that occur on land, though magnified and accelerated by the unique properties of water. Avalanches in the abyss mirror landslides on mountainsides. Canyons carved by underwater currents mirror those etched by rivers above. These parallels offer a bridge between the human understanding of landscapes and the incomprehensible scale of the deep ocean. They remind us that the abyss is not entirely alien. It is a world governed by the same physical laws, yet operating on a scale and in conditions that defy easy perception. As the observation continues, one cannot help but sense the tension between violence and stillness. The mountains are the result of abrupt, catastrophic events, yet now they rest in quiet grandeur. There is a poetry to this juxtaposition, the suddenness of creation through destruction, the permanence of structures born in moments of upheaval. It is a reminder that the abyss is a place of extremes, where the violent and the eternal coexist, where the transient events of landslides produce features that endure far beyond the lifespan of any human witness. One begins to appreciate the depth of patience required to understand such a world, the humility needed to recognize one's smallness against the backdrop of geological time. And yet, in this monumental landscape, the mind cannot resist wandering to human connections. The same forces that built these mountains have interacted silently with history above. The ocean's surface may seem serene, but below, these slopes and ridges have guided currents, influenced sediment deposition, and even shaped the paths of ships long before sonar or compasses existed. The abyss is an active participant in the story of our world, not merely a passive witness. Its peaks and valleys, born of collapse and reshaped by time, exert a subtle but persistent influence on the environment above, reminding us that the unseen often governs what we perceive. Even the act of observation becomes an act of reverence. To study the abyss is to acknowledge both its scale and its patience, to recognize that these mountains have endured events far beyond human comprehension and will continue to do so long after we are gone. The mind struggles to reconcile the enormity of the landscape with the silence that envelops it, the vastness with the delicate details that emerge under careful scrutiny. In every crevice, in every slope, there is a narrative waiting to be read, a story of force, of resilience, of the delicate balance between destruction and creation. As the first glimpses of life appear small, ghostly creatures navigating the darkness, the magnitude of the environment becomes clearer. These mountains are not lifeless. They provide structure, shelter, and influence for the sparse but extraordinary ecosystems that cling to existence in the shadows. It is here, amid the peaks shaped by landslides, that life demonstrates its resilience, finding a foothold in places that, by all rights, should be inhospitable. The abyss, in its silence and enormity, becomes not merely a monument to geological forces, but a cradle for adaptation, a theater in which life continues to explore the boundaries of possibility. The deeper we descend, the more the seabed reveals its subtle yet awe-inspiring textures. The slopes of submerged mountains twist and turn in patterns that seem both deliberate and chaotic, as if the ocean itself had taken a sculptor's hand to the earth. Here, ridges rise sharply from surrounding plains, their jagged edges catching faint glimmers from bioluminescent life, while valleys plunge into shadowy chasms that resist the imagination. The scale is staggering. An entire mountain range, hidden beneath miles of water, rises as a testament to forces both violent and patient. The human mind struggles to grasp the enormity, yet in the silence there is a strange clarity, a sense of purpose to the chaos, as though each crevice and overhang is a line of an ancient poem written in rock and sediment. The abyss is a place where time folds upon itself. Landslides that reshaped entire stretches of the Atlantic left deposits now layered in sedimentary pages, each stratum chronicling the rise and fall of mountains, the flow of currents, the quiet march of millennia. These layers are not inert. They continue to shift imperceptibly under the relentless pressure of the ocean above, a slow, steady movement that reminds any observer that even permanence is transient in this realm. Some ridges, once leveled by the force of collapse, have been subtly rebuilt by drifting sediments, currents sculpting the remnants of cataclysm into forms of unexpected elegance. The mountains speak of violence and stillness, of sudden chaos and gradual artistry, of destruction that leaves behind beauty far beyond human conception. Pressure dominates every moment in this realm. At thousands of meters below the surface, every breath, every movement, every sound is amplified by the crushing weight of the water. Rocks themselves bear witness to this relentless force. Their surfaces are compressed, fractured, yet enduring, evidence that the abyss is both brutal and unforgiving. And yet, despite its hostility, the mountains foster life. Fragile organisms cling to the sides of jagged cliffs, weaving a tenuous existence amid sediment drifts and the faint glow of bioluminescent companions. It is a delicate balance between survival and obliteration, a reminder that life, even in its most tenuous form, persists against the odds. Among these silent peaks, one cannot ignore the presence of past catastrophes. Evidence of ancient landslides is everywhere: sheared cliffs, displaced boulders, gouged valleys that extend for kilometers. The scars of events that reshaped the ocean floor in moments of unimaginable force. Some collapses were sudden, triggered by seismic tremors or the slow creep of accumulated sediment. Others were gradual, a creeping avalanche of material that moved at a pace imperceptible to human observation, but relentless in effect. Each scar tells a story of upheaval, of a sudden reshuffling of mountains and valleys, of forces far beyond human comprehension. The abyss is a palimpsest of destruction, every slide and collapse inscribed upon the next, a layered memory that continues to unfold with each passing century. The interplay of currents and sediment adds an ethereal quality to this landscape. Fine particles drift like smoke through shadowed canyons, settling on overhangs and cliffs with deliberate precision, subtly reshaping the features of mountains that have stood for millennia. These gentle motions are a counterpoint to the violent events that created the mountains in the first place, a slow, ongoing dialogue between force and grace. Even the smallest ripple of current can alter the course of sediment, redirecting the flow, revealing hidden textures, and uncovering secrets long buried beneath layers of debris. It is a reminder that the abyss is dynamic, not static, a world in which change is constant, whether sudden or imperceptibly slow. Life in these depths is sparse but extraordinary. Adapted to the crushing darkness, creatures of the abyss navigate the mountains with an eerie precision, finding shelter in crevices and feeding on what little the currents bring. Strange, almost alien forms drift through the shadowed valleys, elongated fish with translucent bodies, crustaceans with appendages adapted to the faintest motion, and other beings whose existence seems to defy logic. Their presence punctuates the silent grandeur of the mountains, a living testament to resilience in a realm that seems designed to crush the unprepared. They are silent witnesses, much like the mountains themselves, their movements graceful yet purposeful, an extension of the environment rather than intrusion. There is a rhythm to the abyss, a cadence dictated by forces invisible yet omnipresent. Currents sweep over ridges, whisper through valleys, and stir fine sediments into fleeting patterns that vanish as quickly as they appear. Landslides, both ancient and recent, have set the stage for these currents, sculpting the terrain to guide flows and trap particles, shaping habitats for life in ways that are subtle yet profound. Each feature of the submerged mountains, from the jagged peaks to the smooth plains, is a result of interactions that span time and space, a choreography of destruction and preservation, of movement and stillness, of life and the forces that both sustain and threaten it. The mountains themselves are not merely geological features. They are the keepers of history. In their layers, one can read the memory of tectonic shifts, seismic tremors, and ocean currents, all interwoven in a record far older than human civilization. They are archives of the Atlantic, silent yet eloquent, speaking in a language of sediment and stone. Every collapse, every ridge, every valley is a phrase in this eternal narrative, a reminder that the ocean floor is more than a backdrop for human history. It is a stage upon which forces beyond comprehension play out their dramas, shaping the world above as well as the world below. Even the imagination struggles to fully grasp the scale and detail of this environment. Mountains taller than any terrestrial peak rise abruptly from valleys deeper than any canyon, their forms both jagged and smooth, their surfaces a mosaic of fine sediments and fractured rock. It is a landscape at once alien and strangely familiar, echoing the processes of landslides and erosion that occur on land but magnified and accelerated by the density and pressure of water. Observers are struck by the simultaneity of permanence and change, the constant reminder that even what seems solid and immovable is subject to the patient, relentless forces of the abyss. And as the light fades entirely, replaced by the bioluminescent glimmers of life clinging to rock and sediment, the mountains take on a new presence. They are no longer simply geological formations. They become monumental characters in a story of creation, destruction, and survival. The abyss itself seems to breathe around them, currents shifting like lungs, sediment drifting like blood through veins, life responding in quiet ways to the pulse of the mountains. Here, in the shadows of the abyss, one perceives the Atlantic not as a void, but as a living, breathing entity, ancient and immense, patient yet violent, silent yet endlessly expressive. As we linger among the peaks and valleys of the abyss, it becomes impossible to separate the concept of the mountains from the ocean itself. The terrain is not merely a backdrop. It is an active participant in the story of the Atlantic, a stage upon which currents, sediments, and life all converge. The peaks and ridges guide flows, trap drifting particles, and provide shelter for the smallest denizens of the deep. The very shape of the ocean floor dictates patterns of movement, creating subtle microclimates within the shadows of the mountains. In these quiet recesses, one senses the dialogue between force and life. The landslides that once tore the seabed apart, now offering refuge and structure to species that have adapted to this extreme darkness. The silence of the abyss is profound, yet it is filled with the echoes of events that occurred millions of years before humans ever looked to the sea. One can imagine the moment a massive slope gave way, the sudden displacement of sediment cascading into valleys below, reshaping everything in its path. Entire mountains could rise in a matter of hours, a cataclysm frozen in the layers of stone and silt. The seabed preserves these moments with exquisite fidelity. Gouges in rock, striations in sediment, chaotic deposits that speak to the immense energy involved. And in the aftermath, a new order emerges. Valleys fill with sediment, ridges stabilize, and life begins its slow colonization once more. It is a rhythm of destruction and renewal, repeated over eons, a dance as elegant as it is violent. Even the currents that sweep through these shadowed peaks are shaped by history. They curve around ridges, accelerate through narrow chasms, and eddy in hidden pockets, interacting with the topography in ways that are almost deliberate. Each twist and turn of water is influenced by events that occurred long before, a memory encoded in the shape of the seabed itself. Fine particles drift slowly, settling in the still areas while being swept away in more turbulent zones, forming patterns that are invisible to the naked eye, but crucial for understanding the ongoing evolution of the abyss. In these movements, the mountains continue to write their story, one invisible ripple at a time, silently shaping the world above and below the waves. And then there is the life, the strange, otherworldly beings that cling to existence in the shadows of the peaks. Blind fish with translucent bodies drift in the currents, their elongated forms gliding gracefully through the water. Crustaceans navigate narrow crevices, their limbs adapted to hold fast against sudden shifts of sediment. Bioluminescent organisms flicker across the surfaces of rock like a celestial constellation, highlighting details that otherwise might remain hidden. Each creature, each adaptation, is a response to a world defined by pressure, darkness, and the immense scale of the mountains themselves. Their survival is a subtle testament to resilience, a quiet counterpoint to the violent history etched into the seabed. The mountains themselves take on a personality as one moves among them. Sharp ridges seem to loom like watchful sentinels, jagged cliffs appear as silent judges, and deep valleys evoke the quiet melancholy of forgotten epochs. It is easy to imagine these formations as conscious entities, bearing witness to the eons of collapse and creation, silently observing the comings and goings of life, the ebbs and flows of currents, and the occasional intrusion of human curiosity. The abyss, in this light, feels alive not in the biological sense alone, but as a living chronicle of the planet, a repository of memory, pressure, and time. Every rock, every slope, every crevice is a word in the ongoing story of the Atlantic. Descending deeper still, one begins to notice the faint scars of more recent events. Tiny landslides, far smaller than the ancient cataclysms, have nudged sediment along slopes, creating subtle shifts in the contours of the mountains. These minor disturbances are reminders that the abyss is not frozen in time. It continues to evolve, minute by minute, year by year, century by century. Even in a realm dominated by forces that humans cannot hope to replicate, change is constant, relentless, and unforgiving. There is an almost spiritual lesson here. Permanence exists only in perception, while reality is a continual process of becoming, collapsing, and reshaping itself over scales both vast and imperceptible. And yet, amid this darkness and pressure, there is a stark beauty. The mountains, the ridges, the valleys, and the bioluminescent life that adorns them create a panorama that is simultaneously alien and breathtaking. It is a silent, cinematic grandeur where every detail matters, every shadow tells a story, and every movement, no matter how subtle, is significant. The ocean floor here is a theater, presenting a spectacle of scale, motion, and resilience. One cannot help but feel both awe and humility, confronted by a world that is ancient, immense, and infinitely complex, yet so intimately detailed that it invites quiet contemplation and study. As Part 4 comes to a close, the realization settles in that the abyss is both a monument and a narrative, a testament to cataclysmic events, the patient work of time, and the adaptability of life. The submerged mountains are more than physical formations. They are chapters in a story that spans millions of years, silent but eloquent witnesses to the forces that shaped our planet. They are reminders of the power and mystery of the deep, of the interplay between violence and creation, and of the delicate persistence of life amid unimaginable pressure and darkness. And yet, even as the descent slows and the observer begins to pull away, the mountains do not relinquish their secrets. They remain silent and eternal, towering in their shadowed grandeur, waiting for the next story to be read, the next exploration to reveal what lies hidden in the folds of the abyss. The Atlantic has not yielded all its mysteries, and the submerged mountains, born of landslides and sculpted by time, continue to guard the depths, reminding us that the world beneath the waves is as monumental and mysterious as any on the surface. The Atlantic, serene on the surface, hides a violent underworld where forces of unimaginable power have reshaped the ocean floor again and again. Far beneath the gentle swell of the waves, the seabed is a landscape of upheaval, carved by cataclysms that leave scars stretching for hundreds of kilometers. Landslides in the deep sea are not gradual. They are sudden colossal events, displacing millions of tons of sediment in moments, their impact echoing silently through the dark, pressurized waters. These cataclysms are the architects of submerged mountains and vast canyons, violent sculptors that leave both destruction and enduring beauty in their wake. To witness their legacy is to confront a scale of force that humbles even the most audacious human imagination. In these abyssal realms, The mechanics of underwater landslides unfold like a carefully orchestrated, if catastrophic, ballet. Layers of sediment, accumulating over centuries, build tension as they press against one another. The slightest instability, perhaps a tremor, a shifting current, or the slow creep of weight, can trigger a collapse of unimaginable proportions. Entire slopes give way, plowing through valleys, gouging trenches, and piling debris into monumental structures. These events are both destructive and generative. They erase old landscapes while creating new forms, leaving behind jagged peaks and ridges that endure for millennia. In their wake, the ocean floor is transformed, a testament to the duality of power and artistry inherent in nature's deepest processes. The speed at which these landslides occur is almost inconceivable. In moments, massive volumes of sediment can surge downward, accelerating as they descend, breaking apart rocks, uprooting buried life, and creating turbulence that extends for miles. Yet to the casual observer at the surface, the ocean may appear placid, its waves gentle and rhythmic. This contrast is one of the abyss's most striking lessons, that immense force can exist unnoticed, hidden beneath a veil of calm. The cataclysms of the deep are silent in their execution, but monumental in effect, reshaping terrain and influencing ecosystems in ways that may take centuries to become fully visible. Geologists have mapped these underwater avalanches through subtle traces preserved in the sedimentary record. Gouges in the seabed, chaotic deposits of rock, and unusually steep slopes reveal the intensity and direction of past collapses. Each landslide is a frozen moment of motion, a signature of the ocean's capacity for sudden dramatic change. Unlike earthquakes or surface landslides, which leave immediate and visible consequences, submarine events are recorded quietly in the folds of the earth beneath the waves. Only careful observation, deep-sea exploration, and advanced sonar mapping can reveal their presence, and even then, much of their scale remains almost unimaginable. The aftermath of these cataclysms is a paradoxical blend of devastation and order. Valleys carved by the force of sliding sediment form new channels for currents, guiding flows that redistribute material across the ocean floor. Piles of displaced rock become the foundations of future ridges, providing shelter for life that survives the initial upheaval. In this way, destruction becomes creation, a fundamental truth of the abyssal world. Every landslide leaves a trace, a narrative embedded in stone and silt that speaks of both power and inevitability, of moments of violent change followed by centuries of patient stabilization. Even the most catastrophic events are influenced by subtle environmental factors. Variations in water temperature, the slow accumulation of sediment, and even the shifting of currents over time create conditions ripe for collapse. The Atlantic's underwater mountains are particularly vulnerable, their slopes precariously balanced, waiting for the right combination of triggers to set a landslide in motion. When such an event occurs, the consequences can ripple far beyond the immediate site. Sediment flows can bury previously stable terrain, alter the paths of underwater currents, and impact ecosystems across vast areas. In essence, each collapse is both a localized catastrophe and a planetary-scale recalibration, a reminder of the interconnectedness of the ocean's hidden systems. Scientists studying these cataclysms are often struck by the sheer unpredictability of their timing. A slope may remain stable for centuries, appearing impervious to pressure and currents, only to fail suddenly with devastating force. This unpredictability gives the abyss a sense of urgency, as if every mountain, every ridge, every valley exists on the edge of transformation. Observers can read the signs in subtle shifts, minor fissures, and micro-movements, but the exact moment of collapse is impossible to forecast. It is a world governed by rules both discernible and mysterious, where power lies dormant until released in breathtaking instantaneity. The geological choreography of these events is mirrored by their effect on life. Submarine landslides can obliterate fragile ecosystems, burying organisms under tons of sediment in mere moments. Yet they also create new habitats, carving channels and forming ridges that provide shelter for species capable of reconify. In this way, life and catastrophe are intertwined. Destruction becomes opportunity, death becomes foundation, and the very process of collapse fosters future resilience. The abyss, in this interplay of force and survival, reveals a rhythm that is both brutal and poetic, a reflection of the delicate balance that governs all life on Earth. And amid this immense scale, human presence seems almost inconsequential. Technology allows us to peer into these depths, to map mountains, trace landslides, and capture fleeting glimpses of life. But the true magnitude of these cataclysms remains largely beyond comprehension. Sonar images reveal ridges taller than the tallest terrestrial mountains, valleys deeper than any canyon, and debris fields that stretch for kilometers. Yet these maps can only hint at the dynamic forces that created them, at the instant when a slope gave way and sent millions of tons of material cascading into the abyss. Observers are left to imagine the sheer energy, the noise, and the fury of events that the ocean itself has long since silenced. The allure of these underwater cataclysms lies not only in their scale, but in their mystery. Unlike terrestrial disasters, which can be witnessed and studied immediately, submarine landslides leave only traces, their story written in sediment and stone. The challenge of interpretation becomes part of the fascination, an intellectual and emotional pursuit that demands patience, skill, and imagination. Each landslide discovered, mapped, or analyzed is a revelation, a glimpse into a process that continues to shape the Atlantic in silence, far beneath human perception. The deeper one explores, the more the rhythm of catastrophe becomes apparent. Peaks and ridges tell a story of tension and release, of mountains built in moments and reshaped over millennia. Valleys are etched by the flow of displaced sediment, channels carved by the invisible hand of underwater avalanches. And through it all, currents continue to move. Life continues to adapt, and the ocean remains an active participant in its own geological history. The abyss is a stage where cataclysm and creation play out endlessly, a reminder that beneath the placid waves lies a world of raw, unrelenting power that continues to sculpt our planet in silence. The scale of these submarine catastrophes is staggering, beyond anything experienced on land. A single landslide can displace billions of tons of sediment, crushing the seabed and reshaping entire regions in moments. Imagine mountains collapsing in silence, boulders and mud cascading downward with unstoppable momentum, carving trenches deeper than the tallest terrestrial canyons, and piling debris into new peaks that reach skyward, or rather, upward from the ocean floor. In the darkness, lightless and oppressive, the energy released is almost incomprehensible. Yet it is a force that leaves behind not only destruction, but a sculpted, haunting beauty. Each collapse writes a new chapter in the ongoing story of the Atlantic, a narrative encoded in layers of rock and sediment, waiting patiently to be deciphered. These landslides are both violent and precise, dictated by subtle factors that accumulate over centuries. Sediment slowly gathers on the slopes of underwater mountains, gradually building tension. The weight increases, the pressure mounts, and the composition of the sediment determines whether the slope will hold or fail. Sometimes, a tremor or a minor shift in currents is enough to trigger a sudden collapse, an event that can travel for tens or hundreds of kilometers across the seabed. Once initiated, the flow becomes unstoppable, accelerated by gravity and the fluidity of saturated sediments. It is an immense, almost otherworldly choreography of movement, a silent yet devastating ballet performed on a scale the human mind can scarcely comprehend. The aftermath of a landslide is a testament to both the destructive and creative forces of the deep. Valleys that were once smooth plains are gouged into jagged trenches. Sediment has displaced across kilometers, forming ridges and mounds that rise like sculpted peaks in a frozen instant. Even in destruction, there is artistry. The patterns created by displaced material, the contours carved by flowing debris, and the subtle undulations left behind by the force of collapse all speak to a natural design that is both brutal and breathtaking. These features endure for millennia, a permanent imprint of moments that passed in an instant, invisible to those who only glance at the surface. Life in the wake of these cataclysms is a study in resilience. Organisms that inhabit the abyss are adapted to extremes, but even they are tested by sudden landslides. The smallest tremor can bury fragile communities under tons of sediment, yet new habitats are simultaneously created. Crevices and ridges formed by displaced debris provide shelter for colonizing species. Currents redistribute nutrients, and life slowly recolonizes the reshaped terrain. In this sense, destruction and renewal are inseparable. Catastrophe is also a mechanism of creation, a process that sustains the dynamic equilibrium of the deep ocean. The mountains themselves, though born of violent upheaval, become a foundation for life, a paradox of survival forged from calamity. The magnitude of these events is reflected in the subtle, lingering effects that ripple far from the immediate site of collapse. Sediment flows can alter the shape of neighboring valleys, redirecting currents and impacting distant ecosystems. Subtle shifts in the terrain may influence the migratory patterns of abyssal life, redirecting feeding grounds and nesting areas. In some cases, landslides have even contributed to the formation of the surface, though their origins remain hidden beneath kilometers of water. The abyss is a world in which local events have global implications, a reminder that the forces shaping our planet often operate far from human eyes, silently, patiently, yet with profound consequences. The study of these cataclysms relies on the careful interpretation of evidence left behind. Sonar imaging and submersible exploration reveal scarred slopes, displaced boulders, and sediment layers that detail the sequence of past collapses. Patterns emerge, showing how debris flows follow natural channels, how certain slopes are more prone to failure, and how pressure, gravity, and water currents interact to create instability. Every landslide is a frozen story, a moment preserved in the strata of the ocean floor, and decoding these stories allows scientists to understand not only the history of the abyss, but also the ongoing processes that continue to shape it. Despite the sophistication of modern technology, the unpredictability of these events remains staggering. No model can precisely predict when or where the next massive collapse will occur. Slopes that have been stable for centuries may suddenly fail, triggered by forces imperceptible to human measurement. This uncertainty imparts a sense of awe and humility to all who study the deep. It is a world in which control is impossible, in which patience and observation are the only tools capable of unraveling its mysteries. The cataclysms of the Atlantic are a reminder that the Earth is ancient, immense, and mercurial, operating according to rhythms and scales that challenge human understanding. The emotional weight of these underwater events is profound. One can visualize the enormity of the force unleashed. Mountains of sediment accelerating silently, crushing all in their path, and yet sculpting the landscape with meticulous, natural precision. There is terror in the violence, but also beauty in the resulting formations, the jagged peaks, deep trenches, and sculpted valleys that endure long after the collapse has passed. It is a paradox that the most catastrophic moments produce some of the most visually striking and geologically significant features of the abyss. The Atlantic is at once a place of unimaginable danger and an arena for extraordinary natural artistry. And amidst this violent grandeur, human curiosity persists. Researchers deploy autonomous submersibles, sonar scanners, and sediment probes, piecing together the fragments of these ancient cataclysms. Every ridge mapped, every debris field analyzed, adds to our understanding of the mechanisms behind landslides, the forces shaping the seabed, and the intricate interplay between destruction and creation. Yet even with this technology, the ocean maintains its secrets. Vast stretches of submerged mountains remain unexplored, their histories written in stone and mud, waiting for the next expedition to reveal their stories. The abyss challenges our perception, demanding both awe and humility, as it reminds us that the world beneath the waves is far more dynamic and violent than the calm surface suggests. The deeper we venture into the Atlantic abyss, the more the patterns of catastrophe reveal themselves. These underwater landslides are not random. They follow subtle clues etched into the very structure of the seabed. The accumulation of sediment, the tilt of slopes, the presence of ancient ridges, all these factors interact in a complex calculus of instability. In places where pressure has built unchecked for centuries, even a minor tremor or the slightest shift in water currents can unleash a flow of sediment that cascades for miles. The energy released is almost unfathomable, yet it is contained entirely within the darkness, hidden beneath a placid sea, leaving no immediate trace on the world above. The abyss, in this sense, is a theater of silent power, where moments of unimaginable force are preserved in the eternal stillness of deep water. The scars of past cataclysms are everywhere, carved into the contours of submerged mountains like lines in a vast geological manuscript. Valleys gouged by sudden collapses snake between jagged ridges, their walls polished and strided by the passage of tons of rock and sediment. Debris fields stretch for kilometers, their chaotic forms a record of the violent motion that created them. Even the smallest slopes may hold subtle traces of micro-landslides, delicate signs of instability that speak to the ongoing dynamics of the seabed. It is a landscape written in the language of force, a chronicle of events that are violent, sudden, and yet, paradoxically, aesthetically precise. The impact of these cataclysms extends beyond the immediate sight. Debris flows can block channels, redirect currents, and reshape sediment deposition in surrounding regions. These changes influence not only the terrain but the ecosystems that depend on it. Abyssal species, from delicate crustaceans to strange blind fish, navigate a world continually being redefined by forces they cannot perceive. In some cases, landslides have led to the formation of entirely new habitats, deep crevices and ridges providing shelter and feeding grounds for organisms previously unable to survive in the area. The interplay between destruction and creation is constant. Every collapse is simultaneously an act of erasure and a foundation for renewal. The most dramatic landslides often occur near continental slopes, where the sediment load is greatest and the angle of repose teeters precariously. Here, a single instability can unleash flows that travel at astonishing speeds, carving out gullies and depositing material in chaotic mounds across the plains below. These megaslides are rare, yet their effects are monumental. Entire landscapes are reimagined in moments. Features that have taken millennia to form are reshaped, and new peaks and valleys rise like monuments in the eternal darkness. For scientists studying the abyss, these events provide both a challenge and an opportunity to decipher the processes that drive such colossal forces and to understand the long-term implications for ocean dynamics and ecosystems. The elegance of these cataclysms lies not in their violence, but in their outcomes. The resulting formations, jagged ridges, polished cliffs, and undulating valleys display a natural artistry born from chaos. Sediment flows mold themselves to the contours of the seabed, leaving behind patterns that echo the forces that produce them. Peaks are sculpted with sharp precision, valleys carved with fluid grace, and debris fields spread like frozen waves of movement. In these formations, one can see both the brutality of the process and the unexpected beauty that emerges from it. The abyss, in this way, is a paradoxical landscape, terrifying in its raw power, yet mesmerizing in the forms it creates. Observation of these landscapes reveals a delicate balance between instability and equilibrium. While the immediate effects of a landslide are dramatic, The aftermath is often a slow process of stabilization. Sediment continues to settle, currents redistribute material, and life begins to reclaim the altered terrain. This equilibrium, however, is fragile. A minor shift can trigger a chain reaction, setting off secondary slides and reshaping the seabed further. The mountains of the abyss are alive in this sense, dynamic and ever-changing. Their forms both permanent and transient. They remind us that the ocean is not a static entity, but a realm in which force and patience coalesce, producing landscapes that endure, yet continue to evolve. Amid this violent choreography, one cannot ignore the human fascination with the abyss. Deep-sea technology, autonomous vehicles, remotely operated submersibles, and sonar mapping systems has allowed researchers to witness, indirectly, the magnitude of these cataclysms. Each expedition reveals new insights: the height of ridges, the depth of valleys, the extent of debris flows. But even with these tools, the ocean maintains its mysteries. The exact timing of events, the triggers for megaslides, and the full impact on ecosystems often remain elusive. The abyss is a world of both revelation and concealment, a place that challenges human understanding at every turn. And yet, the allure of these underwater cataclysms is irresistible. There is something profoundly humbling about encountering landscapes shaped by forces beyond comprehension, where the interplay of gravity, pressure, and time has created a hidden world of drama and artistry. Each landslide, whether ancient or recent, is a reminder that the Earth's processes operate on scales both immense and intricate, indifferent to human presence. In the silent grandeur of the abyss, one senses the enormity of time and the persistent power of nature, forces that continue to shape our planet long after individual lives have passed. As Part 3 draws to a close, the realization emerges that the abyss is more than a backdrop for geological processes. It is a living chronicle, a dynamic arena in which cataclysm and creation intertwine. Submarine landslides, violent yet precise, destructive yet generative, shape the mountains and valleys of the Atlantic, creating landscapes of unparalleled scale and complexity. They remind us that the ocean, far from being a placid expanse, is a realm of continuous transformation, where hidden forces write their narratives in stone and sediment, sculpting a world both terrifying and beautiful, eternal and ever-changing. The aftermath of a cataclysm is a study in both devastation and resilience. Where once a slope held ancient sediment, now lies a chaotic landscape of displaced rock, mud, and sand, stretching across kilometers of the ocean floor. Valleys carved by unstoppable flows resemble the scars of some colossal hand sweeping across the seabed, gouging channels with ruthless precision. Debris fields rise into mounds and ridges, each bearing evidence of the immense energy that created them. In these formations, the traces of motion are frozen in time, a permanent record of moments that must have unfolded faster than the mind can fully imagine, yet left behind a landscape of silent, haunting beauty. In this transformed terrain, life finds its way. Creatures adapted to extreme darkness, immense pressure, and scarce resources navigate the new formations with a quiet determination. Tiny crustaceans scuttle through crevices, blind fish glide past newly formed ridges, and bioluminescent organisms flicker across the surfaces of rocks like stars in a perpetual night. The very cataclysms that obliterated habitats now create new niches, offering shelter and pathways for recodify. The relationship between catastrophe and survival is inseparable. Each collapse is simultaneously an act of destruction and an opportunity for life to adapt and flourish in previously inaccessible spaces. The forces that drive these landslides are both subtle and immense. The slow accumulation of sediment over centuries builds tension, while tectonic shifts in ocean currents may provide the final impetus for collapse. Once a slide begins, gravity and the fluidity of water-saturated sediment amplify its velocity and reach. These events unfold silently, hidden beneath kilometers of water, yet their impact resonates across the abyss, reshaping landscapes, redirecting currents, and influencing ecosystems far beyond the immediate sight. The ocean, often perceived as calm and infinite, is revealed as a dynamic, ever-changing system, where hidden forces wield power on a scale that humbles any observer. One of the most striking aspects of these underwater cataclysms is their unpredictability. Slopes that have remained stable for centuries may fail suddenly, triggered by forces imperceptible to human senses. Minor tremors, slight shifts in sediment, or subtle changes in currents can set off events of monumental proportions. This uncertainty adds a layer of tension to the study of the abyss, emphasizing the fragility of equilibrium in a world defined by extremes. Each landslide is both a conclusion and a beginning, an ending for some forms, a foundation for others. The mountains of the Atlantic are living archives, their structures continuously influenced by the interplay of pressure, sediment, and water. The scale of these events is difficult to overstate. Megaslides can carve valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, displace volumes of material that dwarf the largest terrestrial landslides, and create ridges that tower higher than any peak on land. The energy involved is both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a reminder of forces that operate independently of human observation or control. Even with modern technology, the full impact of a landslide is often invisible from the surface. Only careful exploration of the abyss reveals the magnitude of these cataclysms. Sonar maps, submersible footage, and sediment cores provide glimpses into the past, but the complete drama remains hidden, leaving a sense of mystery and reverence for the immense forces at play. The elegance of the abyss emerges not in spite of catastrophe, but because of it. The ridges and valleys, the undulating plains and jagged peaks, all result from events that were violent yet precise. Sediment flows conform to the contours of the seabed, leaving behind patterns that are as intricate as they are enormous. Even the destruction itself becomes a form of artistry, the raw energy of collapse sculpting a landscape of unimaginable scale. Observing these formations evokes both fear and wonder, a recognition of the power that exists in silence beneath the waves and the strange, haunting beauty that results from it. Beyond the physical impact, these cataclysms carry profound temporal significance. Each landslide is a marker in the history of the Atlantic, a chapter written in stone and silt, telling stories that span millions of years. They remind us that the ocean is not static. It is a theater of continuous transformation, where destruction and creation are inseparable. Valleys carved in a single event may endure for millennia. Ridges may stand as silent monuments to moments of sudden force, and sediment layers continue to shift slowly, influenced by currents and gravity. The abyss is a dynamic chronicle, documenting both the transient and the eternal, the violent and the subtle. Human exploration adds another dimension to this narrative. Submersibles, remotely operated vehicles, and advanced sonar technologies allow us to witness these formations in ways that were impossible just decades ago. Scientists map the ridges, study the debris fields, and analyze sediment layers, piecing together the chronology of past collapses. Yet, despite these advances, much remains unknown. Vast regions of the abyss remain unexplored, their histories hidden beneath darkness and pressure. The mystery endures, and with it, a sense of awe and humility, an acknowledgement that, while we can observe and study, the ocean ultimately governs the rules of its own domain. As Part 4 concludes, the interplay of power, beauty, and life becomes unmistakable. The cataclysms beneath the waves have shaped the Atlantic in ways both dramatic and subtle, leaving mountains, valleys, and debris fields as enduring monuments to events that unfolded in silence. Life persists, adapting to the constantly shifting terrain, while the ocean continues to move, redistribute sediment, and shape the landscape. The abyss is a realm where violence and elegance coexist, where destruction becomes creation, and where the scale of time and force far exceeds human comprehension. In witnessing it, one is reminded of the profound mystery and power that lie beneath the surface, a world that continues to evolve silently, inexorably, and magnificently. Beneath the calm, glassy surface of the Atlantic, entire mountain ranges rise from the abyss, hidden from the eyes of the world. These peaks, sculpted by millennia of sediment shifts, tectonic pressures, and violent landslides, remain largely unexplored, their magnitude and complexity almost incomprehensible. They form a secret topography, a landscape of jagged ridges, towering cliffs, and shadowed valleys that stretches for hundreds of kilometers. In the darkness of the deep, light never reaches these mountains, yet they possess a presence so immense, so commanding, that one can feel their scale even without seeing them directly. They are hidden monarchs of the abyss, silent sentinels that have witnessed events far older than human history. The formation of these peaks is a story of violence and patience. Each ridge, each rise, was born from colossal landslides, the sudden collapse of underwater slopes sending immense volumes of sediment and rock tumbling into the abyss. These events, catastrophic in their force, created ridges and mountains in moments. Yet the shaping of the terrain continued for centuries, as currents redistributed sediment and minor slides subtly altered contours. The peaks are therefore both the result of instantaneous upheaval and slow, relentless evolution, a paradox of sudden creation and meticulous sculpting by the patient hands of nature. They are monuments to forces that operate on scales both temporal and spatial, beyond human reckoning. Exploring these hidden peaks is to confront the duality of the abyss, immense stillness punctuated by constant, imperceptible motion. Currents flow over ridges, sweeping sediment into new patterns, filling depressions and carving channels that guide life and material alike. Tiny microslides ripple across slopes, rearranging layers of sediment that have existed for centuries. Every rock, every ridge, every valley is subtly alive with motion, a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, the earth continues to breathe. It is a landscape that is at once alien and familiar, echoing the mountains and valleys of terrestrial lands, yet magnified, intensified, and shrouded in a timeless, inky blackness. These peaks are not barren. Life clings tenaciously to their surfaces. In crevices and depressions, crustaceans scuttle, polyps attach to rock faces, and strange fish drift through narrow canyons. Bioluminescent organisms flicker across the peaks, their tiny lights illuminating surfaces that would otherwise remain invisible. The peaks themselves shape these ecosystems, providing shelter from currents, surfaces for attachment, and paths for movement. Life here is subtle, quiet, and extraordinarily resilient, adapted to pressure, darkness, and scarcity. In the shadow of these hidden mountains, one senses the delicate interplay between structure and survival, a constant negotiation with forces far larger than any individual organism. Geologically, these peaks are extraordinary archives of the Atlantic's history. Sediment layers, sometimes hundreds of meters thick, reveal cycles of accumulation, collapse, and redistribution. Each stratum is a page in the geological narrative, chronicling landslides, the steady creep of sediment, and the relentless shaping of the ocean floor. Rocks embedded within these layers tell tales of pressure and collision, evidence of tectonic forces that have silently molded the Atlantic for eons. To navigate these peaks is to traverse time itself, moving through landscapes that record millions of years of cataclysm and creation, a history invisible on the surface, but etched indelibly in the depths. The scale of these mountains defies imagination. Some ridges rise thousands of meters above the plains of the abyss, their slopes steeper than any terrestrial cliff. Valleys plunge into depths that seem infinite, shadowed chasms where light has never reached and where pressure crushes without mercy. From above, the peaks form a jagged skyline, an alien range that dwarfs anything on land. Even the smallest formations become monumental in the darkness, their edges sharp, their angles impossible, and their surfaces a tapestry of sediment, rock, and subtle traces of life. In this hidden world, the ordinary measures of size, time, and distance lose meaning, replaced by the raw scale of the abyss itself. The peaks also reveal the interplay between catastrophe and creation. Many were formed in moments of violent upheaval, landslides that reshaped the seabed, deposits that piled into ridges, trenches carved by flows that displaced unimaginable volumes of sediment. Yet their continued existence depends on patient, imperceptible forces, currents that redistribute fine particles, slow movements of tectonic plates, and minor slides that smooth sharp edges. The peaks are therefore both the result of instantaneous chaos and the product of eons of subtle evolution, monuments to the intertwined forces of violence and persistence. Human understanding of these hidden peaks remains limited. Technology allows glimpses, submersibles map surfaces, sonar scans reveal ridges, and sediment cores unlock histories buried for millennia. Yet most of the Atlantic remains unmapped, its mountains hidden beneath kilometers of water. Every expedition uncovers new surprises, unexpected ridges, deep canyons, and sediment structures that defy prediction. The ocean guards its secrets jealously, offering only fragments to the human eye, and each revelation deepens the sense of mystery and awe. The peaks are not merely geological features. They are sentinels of the abyss, silent witnesses to a history both violent and majestic. And yet, for all their scale and power, these mountains are fragile. A shift in sediment, a tremor along a slope, or a minor landslide can reshape their surfaces in moments. The hidden peaks exist in a delicate balance, stable for centuries, but always subject to change. This fragility contrasts with their permanence, creating a tension that defines the abyss, a place of both enduring monumentality and unpredictable transformation. Every ridge tells a story of forces immense and subtle, and every valley echoes with the memory of upheaval, waiting for the next cataclysm to reshape the narrative. As Part 1 concludes, one realizes that the hidden peaks of the Atlantic are more than mere geological formations. They are archives of time, theaters of life, and monuments to forces beyond human comprehension. They stand in silent majesty, sculpted by violence and patience alike, shaping currents, sheltering life, and recording the endless drama of the deep. To witness them is to confront the enormity, beauty, and mystery of a world largely unseen, a world where mountains rise from darkness untouched by light, yet illuminated by the persistent pulse of the ocean itself. The peaks of the abyss are more than geological structures. They are markers of both time and motion, silent witnesses to the forces that have shaped the Atlantic over millions of years. Each ridge, cliff, and valley tells a story of accumulation and collapse, a testament to the interplay of pressure, sediment, and water. These mountains are formed from the remnants of ancient landslides, their debris frozen in patterns of extraordinary scale. In some places, ridges rise abruptly from the seabed like frozen waves, their edges jagged and unforgiving, while in others, gentle slopes hint at millennia of subtle shaping by currents and sediment drift. The peaks are both monuments to violence and testaments to patience, enduring and evolving simultaneously. Exploring these mountains, one begins to perceive a rhythm to their formation. Catastrophic landslides carve valleys in moments, yet the resulting peaks are sculpted slowly over centuries as currents redistribute sediment and minor slides adjust the contours. There is an almost poetic symmetry in this process. Destruction leads to creation, chaos gives way to structure, and the violent moments that define these mountains are balanced by the quiet persistence of time. Every ridge tells this story. etched in striations and layers of sediment, revealing a narrative of force, resilience, and enduring beauty hidden in the darkness. The peaks serve as anchors in the abyss, shaping the behavior of currents and influencing the distribution of life. Water flows around and over ridges, eddies form in valleys, and sediment drifts into pockets formed by the terrain. These movements are subtle yet continuous, and they have profound effects on the ecosystems clinging to these mountains. Life is sparse, yet incredibly resilient. Bioluminescent organisms flicker along the edges of cliffs. Fish navigate narrow canyons with uncanny precision, and crustaceans find refuge in crevices sculpted by eons of activity. The peaks dictate the rhythm of life here, offering both shelter and challenge, forcing organisms to adapt to a landscape that is monumental in scale and unforgiving in its extremes. The geology of the peaks is a layered narrative of catastrophe and persistence. Sediment strata reveal cycles of landslides, gradual accumulation, and tectonic pressures. Embedded rocks tell stories of compression, fracture, and collision, each fragment a marker of ancient energy. The peaks are thus both historical records and active landscapes, capturing events that occurred millions of years ago while continuing to evolve with every subtle shift of the ocean floor. To study them is to witness the enduring dialogue between force and form, between destruction and creation, that defines the abyss. The scale of these hidden mountains is difficult to comprehend. Some ridges rise several kilometers above the surrounding seabed, their peaks hidden in perpetual darkness. Valleys plunge into shadowy depths, where light cannot reach and pressure crushes all but the hardiest life forms. The jagged skyline of these submerged ranges is unlike anything on land, a testament to the raw power of underwater landslides and tectonic uplift. Even the smallest hills appear monumental, their surfaces fractured, sculpted, and layered with sediment, as though the ocean has etched its own language in rock and mud. Observing them, one is struck by both awe and humility, confronted with a world that dwarfs human comprehension and defies conventional perception. These peaks are not static. They are continually shaped by subtle forces. Minor landslides ripple across slopes, currents redistribute fine sediments, and the slow tectonic drift adjusts the angle and position of ridges. Even imperceptible shifts can have cascading effects, altering the paths of water and life alike. The peaks are alive in this sense, dynamic structures shaped by both violent and gradual processes. They embody the paradox of the abyss: permanence within impermanence, stability within constant motion, monumentality within fragility. Every contour, every slope, every ridge carries a memory of catastrophe and the promise of ongoing change. The peaks also illuminate the mysteries of the deep in ways both profound and unsettling. They challenge human notions of scale, permanence, and visibility. What appears solid and enduring on a map is, in reality, a dynamic formation, vulnerable to collapse, erosion, and reshaping by forces beyond human control. These mountains, formed in moments of violence and sculpted over millennia, remind us that the abyss is a realm of hidden power, where events of unimaginable magnitude occur silently, far from the human eye. The peaks are not merely obstacles or landmarks. They are living archives, recording the history of the Atlantic in ways that demand patience, observation, and reverence. Human technology has allowed us to glimpse these peaks, yet their vastness ensures that much remains unknown. Sonar mapping, autonomous submersibles, and remotely operated vehicles reveal ridges, valleys, and debris fields, but they can capture only fragments of the full landscape. Even the most detailed images fail to convey the scale, pressure, and subtle motion that define the peaks. Each expedition uncovers new ridges, previously hidden channels, and evidence of minor and major landslides, reminding researchers that the ocean's secrets are layered and elusive. The deeper one probes, the more one realizes that the hidden peaks are an ongoing story, one that continues to unfold silently beneath the waves. And yet, for all their isolation, these mountains are intimately connected to the rest of the Atlantic. Currents shaped by their slopes influence sediment deposition across vast distances. Nutrients carried along channels feed distant ecosystems. Life forms that inhabit the peaks may travel, disperse, or adapt in response to changes in topography and water flow. The peaks, though hidden, exert influence far beyond their immediate surroundings, a testament to the interconnectedness of the abyss. Their presence is both local and global, silent yet profoundly consequential, shaping a world that operates on scales that challenge human perception. As Part 2 draws to a close, one realizes that the hidden peaks of the Atlantic are living monuments to both force and patience. Born in moments of catastrophic landslides, shaped over centuries by subtle currents and sediment shifts, and inhabited by resilient life forms, they stand as enduring records of the abyss's ongoing narrative. They are at once terrifying and beautiful, fragile and monumental, static and dynamic. To witness these peaks is to encounter the silent grandeur of the deep, a world that is vast, mysterious, and endlessly compelling, a hidden kingdom beneath the waves, where mountains rise in darkness and the ocean continues its eternal shaping. The peaks of the abyss are more than silent monuments. They are landscapes of tension, their slopes forever on the brink of transformation. Each ridge holds the memory of past collapses, a reminder that even the most imposing structures are vulnerable to sudden shifts. The interplay of sediment, gravity, and water pressure means that stability is always temporary. A minor tremor, a subtle alteration in current, or the gradual accumulation of debris can trigger micro-landslides, subtly reshaping the contours of the peaks. Even in apparent stillness, the mountains of the Atlantic are dynamic entities, alive with potential energy and the history of cataclysmic events that have shaped them over millennia. Descending further into the darkness, one can perceive the peaks as a labyrinth of shadows and textures. Valleys twist between jagged ridges, sometimes opening into vast depressions, sometimes narrowing into tunnels carved by sediment flows. The ocean is dense and cold, and yet it moves with astonishing precision over these hidden landscapes. Currents bend around ridges, accelerate through gaps, and swirl into eddies, redistributing sediment and creating microenvironments that are critical for life. Each peak, each valley, is thus not only a geological formation, but a regulator of the deep, shaping both material and biological patterns in ways that are subtle yet profound. Life clings to these mountains with astonishing resilience. In the shadowed valleys, blind fish drift through narrow channels, navigating by touch and sensing currents with extraordinary sensitivity. Crustaceans and polyps inhabit crevices and pockets, their survival dependent on the shelter and structure provided by the peaks. Even bioluminescent organisms, small flickers of life in the profound darkness, reveal the hidden contours of cliffs and slopes, illuminating the textures that would otherwise remain invisible. In this way, the peaks are both stage and sustenance, sculpting the very ecosystems that depend upon their form. Every ridge and crevice matters, every shadow conceals life, and every subtle shift in sediment alters the intricate balance of these fragile communities. The geological record embedded within the peaks offers insight into the scale of forces that have shaped them. Layers of sediment, some hundreds of meters thick, capture cycles of accumulation, sudden collapse, and slow redistribution. Embedded rocks, twisted and fractured, tell tales of violent landslides, while fine silt records the quiet passage of centuries. These peaks are living archives, each contour a page in a story written in stone and mud. The observer can read the history if they know the language. Gouges and striations reveal moments of collapse. Subtle undulations record slow shifts, and the arrangement of debris fields hints at patterns of force and motion. The peaks are thus both timeless and temporal, monuments to the immense power of nature and the patient hand of slow, relentless change. The scale of these formations challenges perception. Some ridges rise thousands of meters above the surrounding plains, casting shadows that would dwarf any terrestrial landscape. Valleys plunge into depths so extreme that light has never penetrated them, and pressure builds to levels unimaginable on the surface. Yet, it is not only the size that is remarkable, but the intricacy. Each slope, each valley, each ridge is a tapestry of texture, from polished sediment surfaces to jagged fragments of rock, shaped by forces both sudden and gradual. Observing the peaks is to confront the paradox of the abyss, immense and alien, yet intimate and finely detailed, a place where extremes coexist and complement one another. These mountains also hold the memory of cataclysmic events. Landslides, some so massive they dwarf human comprehension, have carved valleys, displaced material, and formed new ridges in moments. The patterns left behind are complex, chaotic yet precise, a record of energy released in total darkness. The peaks, however, do not remain static. Minor slides in sediment redistribution continue to sculpt their surfaces. In this way, the history of violence is interwoven with the process of slow creation. The peaks are chronicles of both upheaval and persistence, where the forces of destruction have paradoxically ensured the survival of life and the endurance of structure. Human exploration of these hidden peaks has revealed both wonder and limitation. Sonar mapping uncovers ridges and valleys. Submersibles capture the textures of cliffs and debris fields. And sediment cores reveal centuries of accumulation and collapse. Yet despite this technology, the vastness and complexity of the peaks mean that most of the Atlantic remains a mystery. Each expedition uncovers unexpected features, hidden valleys, and evidence of previously unknown landslides. The deeper we venture, the more we realize how much remains concealed, and how the mountains guard their secrets with both permanence and impermanence. A silent challenge to human curiosity. The peaks influence the Atlantic far beyond their immediate vicinity. Their slopes guide currents, direct sediment flows, and create pockets of stability for life forms. Nutrients carried by water are distributed according to the contours of the peaks, shaping ecosystems over kilometers. Even in isolation, these mountains are active participants in the broader ecology of the deep, connecting disparate regions through subtle shifts in flow, temperature, and material. Their impact is invisible to the surface, yet monumental to the life that inhabits the abyss and the physical processes that govern it. As Part 3 concludes, the hidden peaks of the Atlantic reveal themselves as landscapes of paradox, immense yet intricate, violent yet patient, enduring yet fragile. They are shaped by the dual forces of sudden catastrophe and slow, relentless motion, sculpting ecosystems and guiding currents in ways both subtle and profound. To encounter these mountains is to confront the power and mystery of the deep, to witness a world where every ridge, every crevice, and every shadow holds significance, and to feel the silent pulse of the ocean itself, a realm of hidden majesty, eternal yet ever-changing. The peaks of the Atlantic rise from the abyss like colossal monuments, silent and eternal, yet they exist on the edge of impermanence. Their surfaces, jagged and fractured, bear the traces of ancient landslides, sudden collapses, and the slow, patient shaping of sediment over millennia. Each ridge is a record of both destruction and creation, a landscape born in violence yet refined by time. Valleys carved by cascading debris lead into shadowed chasms, while towering ridges block currents and redirect sediment, influencing not only the terrain but the delicate ecosystems that cling to these mountains in the darkness. Life and death, creation and collapse coexist on these peaks, intertwined in a rhythm that has persisted long before humanity first glimpsed the ocean. Descending among the ridges, the scale of the peaks becomes staggering. Some rise thousands of meters above the surrounding seabed, their slopes steep and unforgiving. Deep valleys plunge into darkness so profound that sunlight never reaches them, and pressure grows to levels that would crush any surface-dwelling organism. Yet even in this oppressive environment, the peaks harbor life adapted to extremes. Crustaceans cling to crevices, blind fish drift through narrow channels, and bioluminescent organisms cast flickering lights that reveal intricate surfaces of rock and sediment. These mountains are not empty. They are teeming with quiet, resilient life, each organism a testament to survival in a world of extremes. The peaks themselves are dynamic. Micro-landslides ripple across slopes, currents reshape sediment, and minor tectonic shifts adjust the angles and positions of ridges over time. Nothing is static. Even the most monumental ridges are subject to imperceptible motion, a reminder that the ocean is alive with forces invisible from the surface. These movements, subtle yet persistent, ensure that the peaks are continually reshaped, sculpted by the dual hand of catastrophe and patience. The mountains of the abyss are not merely formations. They are processes, ongoing experiments in balance, adaptation, and resilience on a scale difficult for the human mind to grasp. Geologically, these peaks are archives of the Atlantic's hidden history. Layers of sediment, often hundreds of meters thick, record cycles of accumulation, collapse, and redistribution. Embedded rocks and fractured debris tell the story of violent landslides, while finer silt layers capture the quiet passage of centuries. The peaks are living chronicles, preserving moments of intense energy alongside eras of slow, incremental change. Every ridge and valley contains evidence of forces that are at once catastrophic and meticulous, chaotic yet orderly, a record of the dual nature of the ocean's power. To study these mountains is to read a language written over millions of years, a language of stone, mud, and pressure. The peaks also illustrate the paradoxical beauty of catastrophe. While formed in moments of violent upheaval, their surfaces often appear sculpted with precision, as if the ocean itself had carved them with deliberate artistry. Valleys twist and fold, ridges rise sharply yet elegantly, and debris fields spread like frozen waves across the seabed. Even destruction has form, and even chaos has a rhythm. The mountains of the Atlantic are terrifying in scale, yet mesmerizing in their composition, a reminder that the natural world, even at its most violent, is capable of creating landscapes of extraordinary beauty. Human exploration adds both context and wonder. Advanced sonar, submersibles, and remotely operated vehicles allow glimpses into these hidden landscapes, revealing ridges taller than the tallest terrestrial mountains and valleys deeper than any canyon on land. Sediment cores and geological analysis provide insight into their formation, while observations of life demonstrate the peak's ecological significance. Yet the more we learn, the more mysteries emerge. Vast stretches remain unmapped, unseen, and unstudied, leaving the peaks as largely unknowable monuments. Each discovery raises new questions about the forces that shape them, the ecosystems they support, and the hidden processes that continue to sculpt them in silence. The peak's influence extends far beyond their immediate surroundings. By redirecting currents, guiding sediment flows, and shaping nutrient distribution, they affect regions of the Atlantic far beyond their ridges and valleys. Even life that does not inhabit the peaks is indirectly shaped by their presence. The mountains are not isolated. They are integral components of the ocean's dynamic system, silent regulators of both physical and ecological processes. Their hidden majesty is a reminder that the most influential forces are often invisible, operating in darkness and pressure, shaping worlds far from human perception. As Part 4 concludes, the hidden peaks of the Atlantic reveal themselves as landscapes of contradiction, monumental yet intricate, violent yet precise, enduring yet fragile. Born in moments of catastrophic landslides, sculpted over centuries by currents and sediment, and inhabited by resilient life, they are living monuments to the forces of the abyss. They are archives of time, theaters of life, and landscapes of ongoing transformation. To encounter these peaks is to witness the profound power, mystery, and beauty of the ocean's depths, a world of shadow and silence, immense in scale, and eternal in its relentless shaping of the earth beneath the waves. Beneath the Atlantic's vast, glimmering surface, a hidden network of currents surges with relentless power. They are invisible rivers of water, carrying cold, dense plumes from polar regions and warm, buoyant flows from the tropics. These currents collide, swirl, and twist around underwater mountains, over abyssal plains, and through shadowed valleys, shaping the very architecture of the ocean floor. They are both sculptors and life-bringers, moving sediments, redistributing nutrients, and connecting distant ecosystems in a silent symphony of motion. Some currents flow with icy patience, creeping through the abyss with deliberate force, while others surge with the sudden violence of fire, carving valleys and rearranging sediment as if the ocean itself were breathing. The forces behind these currents are monumental. Cold polar waters, heavy with density, sink and spread along the ocean floor, seeking paths through valleys and trenches carved by millennia of geological upheaval. Warm, less dense waters rise and meander along mid-depths, their movement more languid but no less influential. When these opposing flows meet, turbulence erupts. Currents collide against ridges, swirl into deep basins, and accelerate along steep slopes, creating zones of chaos that ripple across hundreds of kilometers. Sediment is lifted, transported, and redeposited, reshaping landscapes that have remained static for centuries. The abyss is a theater of power, where fire and ice meet in an eternal dance of creation and destruction. The interplay of temperature, density, and pressure in these currents determines not only the shape of the seabed, but the fate of life itself. Nutrients carried from distant regions fertilize the dark reaches of the ocean, enabling fragile ecosystems to thrive where sunlight has never penetrated. Tiny organisms drift along these currents, forming the foundation of complex food webs that sustain life hundreds of meters above the seabed. Even the largest predators, slow-moving and adapted to extreme pressure, depend on the subtle rhythms of these flows. In this way, currents are both highways and lifelines, invisible yet critical, connecting distant worlds in a network of energy and sustenance. The patterns created by these movements are intricate and enduring. Currents carve channels through sediment, deposit silt in gentle fan-shaped plains, and shape the slopes of hidden peaks. Valleys deepen, ridges sharpen, and debris fields are rearranged in subtle motions imperceptible to human observation. Over centuries, these processes create landscapes of extraordinary complexity, where every fold of sediment and every undulation of the seabed is a record of the ocean's ceaseless energy. Even in apparent stillness, the abyss is alive, its currents a silent orchestra orchestrating change in a world invisible from the surface. Turbulence among the peaks produces moments of dramatic transformation. When dense, cold water cascades down slopes, it can trigger small-scale sediment avalanches, sending clouds of material racing along valleys. These micro-landslides, though tiny compared to megaslides, continuously reshape the peaks, subtly altering crevices, ridges, and valleys. Over time, the accumulation of such events can transform entire regions, adjusting the distribution of sediment, the course of currents, and the habitats available to abyssal life. The peaks, though seemingly permanent, are constantly sculpted by the invisible hands of fire and ice. These currents also play a critical role in the thermal and chemical balance of the Atlantic. Warm and cold flows mix, creating zones of stratification and turbulence that influence oxygenation, salinity, and the distribution of minerals. Hydrothermal vents, spewing heat and minerals from the ocean's crust, interact with these currents, their fiery plumes carried along hidden channels, feeding life far from their origin. The interplay of fire from the Earth's interior and ice from polar waters forms a complex, dynamic system in which energy, material, and life are continually exchanged, redistributed, and transformed. It is a delicate balance, invisible yet essential, shaping both the physical and biological landscapes of the abyss. The visualizations of these currents are both mesmerizing and terrifying. Imagine rivers of water moving in complete darkness, unseen yet immensely powerful, wrapping around ridges, plunging into valleys, and carving trenches along the seabed. Sediment clouds swirl and twist, illuminated only by the faint glow of bioluminescent organisms, tracing patterns that reveal the hidden geometry of motion. The ocean floor, though static to the untrained eye, is in perpetual motion, molded and remolded by forces that are as relentless as they are invisible. The abyss is a place where fire and ice collide, where calm surfaces hide violent motion, and where every particle of sediment is a participant in an endless choreography of energy and change. These currents also govern the migration of abyssal life. Tiny organisms drift in suspension, carried hundreds of kilometers from their origin, feeding the predators and ecosystems that depend upon them. Some species time their life cycles to the rhythm of these flows, releasing spores or larvae when currents are most favorable. Even the largest scavengers follow these invisible highways, sensing nutrient-rich waters with extraordinary sensitivity. Life in the abyss, though sparse and fragile, is intimately connected to the currents, and the mountains and valleys themselves are designed in ways that both resist and enhance their movement. The peaks and plains are conduits, regulators, and stages for the ocean's pulse. As Part 1 draws to a close, the currents of fire and ice emerge as the hidden engines of the Atlantic. They sculpt the seabed, distribute nutrients, and sustain life in realms untouched by sunlight. They carve valleys, sharpen ridges, and guide the perpetual motion of sediment. They connect distant regions in a silent network of power and flow, embodying both violence and patience, destruction and creation. To witness these currents is to glimpse the living force of the ocean, invisible yet undeniable, a reminder that beneath the tranquil surface lies a world of ceaseless motion, immense energy, and profound mystery, a hidden pulse that shapes the abyss and the life within it. The currents that surge through the Atlantic are not merely passive flows. They are agents of transformation, capable of remaking the seabed over time. When cold, dense waters cascade down continental slopes, they carry with them fine sediment that has accumulated over millennia. These underwater avalanches, though imperceptible from the surface, reshape valleys, fill depressions, and erode ridges with quiet, unstoppable force. The mountains and peaks of the abyss, forged by ancient landslides, are continuously refined by these subtle motions. Even the most monumental ridges are subject to gradual smoothing. Valleys slowly deepen, and new channels emerge, revealing the ocean's ongoing dialogue between chaos and order. The meeting of opposing currents creates zones of turbulence that are both destructive and creative. Where cold, sinking waters encounter warm, ascending flows, eddies twist and spiral, stirring sediments in complex patterns. Layers that have lain undisturbed for centuries are lifted, tumbled, and redeposited, forming miniature ridges, grooves, and fan-shaped plains. This interplay is unpredictable. The ocean does not follow a rigid pattern, yet there is rhythm and logic in the apparent chaos. Each eddy, each swirl, leaves a signature on the seabed, a record of motion that is invisible to the surface, but etched indelibly in the abyss. The peaks and valleys, the ridges and plains, all bear witness to these forces, their forms forever shaped by currents that are both gentle and violent. Life in the abyss has adapted to this constant motion. Bioluminescent organisms drift with the flows, their lights tracing invisible highways through the darkness. Crustaceans and mollusks cling to ridges and crevices, timing their movement to avoid destructive eddies while taking advantage of nutrient-rich currents. Fish navigate turbulent channels with uncanny precision, sensing subtle changes in pressure and flow that guide their paths. These currents dictate not only survival, but also the distribution and diversity of life, linking distant ecosystems and creating dynamic habitats in a world defined by darkness, pressure, and the relentless pulse of moving water. Hydrothermal vents add a fiery dimension to this frozen world. Emerging from cracks in the ocean floor, these vents spew mineral-rich superheated water into the surrounding abyss. When these plumes meet the icy currents, the contrast is dramatic. Hot water rises, cold water sinks, and turbulence swirls between them, carrying nutrients far from their origin. These zones become hotspots of life, where organisms cluster in response to warmth, chemical richness, and the shifting currents that sustain them. Fire and ice, in this context, are not opposites but collaborators, combining to create a dynamic network of energy, movement, and survival. The currents also act as sculptors on a monumental scale. Valleys that were carved by ancient landslides are deepened and widened over centuries. Sediment plains are expanded and smoothed, and channels form along predictable yet ever-shifting paths. Micro-landslides triggered by turbulent flows continuously refine these structures, subtly reshaping crevices and slopes while leaving behind traces of past motion. The peaks, once formed in violent upheaval, are continually polished, their contours adjusted by the patient hand of flowing water. In this way, the ocean maintains a balance between sudden destruction and gradual refinement, where movement is both agent and artist, remolding the abyss in a perpetual cycle. The contrast between visible calm and hidden turbulence is striking. From above, the Atlantic appears placid, serene, even eternal. Beneath that surface, however, currents race with immense energy, unseen but immense in their effect. Sediment clouds rise and fall like ghostly tides, ridges are reshaped by forces invisible, and valleys are deepened in darkness where no human eye has ever penetrated. It is a world of contradictions. Frozen peaks molded by violent flow, still valleys carved by continuous motion, and life that survives only by reading the subtle cues left by these hidden rivers. The ocean is both timeless and dynamic, silent yet forceful, calm yet unpredictable. These currents connect regions of the Atlantic in ways that are imperceptible yet profound. Cold water from polar regions travels thousands of kilometers, feeding deep-sea ecosystems, while warm waters from tropical zones rise and circulate, influencing temperatures and nutrient flows across vast distances. Peaks, ridges, and valleys act as both conduits and barriers, guiding the course of water and life alike. The interaction between topography and flow creates zones of concentration where sediment, nutrients, and organisms accumulate, producing oases in the otherwise sparse abyss. The mountains of the Atlantic, sculpted by landslides, and the currents of fire and ice are therefore inseparable partners, shaping a dynamic, interconnected environment that defies surface observation. The contrast between visible calm and hidden turbulence is striking. From above, the Atlantic appears placid, serene, even eternal. Beneath that surface, however, currents race with immense energy, unseen but immense in their effect. Sediment clouds rise and fall like ghostly tides, ridges are reshaped by forces invisible, and valleys are deepened in darkness where no human eye has ever penetrated. It is a world of contradictions. Frozen peaks molded by violent flow, still valleys carved by continuous motion, and life that survives only by reading the subtle cues left by these hidden rivers. The ocean is both timeless and dynamic, silent yet forceful, calm yet unpredictable. These currents connect regions of the Atlantic in ways that are imperceptible yet profound. Cold water from polar regions travels thousands of kilometers, feeding deep-sea ecosystems, while warm waters from tropical zones rise and circulate, influencing temperatures and nutrient flows across vast distances. Peaks, ridges, and valleys act as both conduits and barriers, guiding the course of water and life alike. The interaction between topography and flow creates zones of concentration where sediment, nutrients, and organisms accumulate, producing oases in the otherwise sparse abyss. The mountains of the Atlantic, sculpted by landslides, and the currents of fire and ice are therefore inseparable partners, shaping a dynamic, interconnected environment that defies surface observation. As Part 2 concludes, the currents of fire and ice emerge as the hidden architects of the abyss. They move with patience and violence, sculpting the seabed, redistributing nutrients, and sustaining life in realms untouched by sunlight. They carve valleys, polish ridges, and shape the hidden peaks, while guiding the survival of creatures adapted to darkness, pressure, and constant motion. The Atlantic is revealed not as a static expanse, but as a dynamic living system, where water, sediment, and life engage in an eternal, invisible dance, a dance of fire and ice that governs the rhythm of the deep and the shape of the hidden world below. The currents of the Atlantic are both invisible sculptors and relentless conveyors, shaping not only the physical landscape of the abyss, but also the lives that inhabit it. In their flow, the ocean reveals an intricate dialogue between power and subtlety. Cold, dense waters descend from the polar regions, traveling along slopes and carving channels as they move, while warmer waters rise and meander through mid-depth layers, their gentle buoyancy interacting with heavier currents to create turbulence and eddies. These interactions are far from random. The peaks, valleys, and ridges of the seabed direct and amplify the currents, orchestrating flows that are both complex and purposeful. The abyss is a dynamic theater where motion, pressure, and life intersect in patterns both predictable and unknowable. In the shallow depths, life has adapted to exploit these flows. Filter-feeding organisms thrive in areas where currents concentrate nutrients, their tiny bodies suspended in the invisible rivers that sweep the ocean floor. Predatory fish patrol channels carved by the currents, their movements synchronized with the pulse of flowing water. Even creatures dwelling in sediments have developed strategies to cope with constant motion, burrowing deeply or clinging to hard surfaces to avoid displacement. In this environment, the currents dictate not only survival but also the very architecture of life, creating patterns of abundance and scarcity, chaos and stability, in a world where light is absent and pressure dominates. The peaks and valleys sculpted by ancient landslides are continuously refined by these currents. Sediment is lifted from slopes, carried along hidden pathways, and deposited in new locations, subtly reshaping the topography over decades and centuries. Valleys deepen, ridges narrow, and fan-shaped plains expand as water works tirelessly upon them. Even the smallest flows leave their mark. Eddies swirl fine particles into intricate patterns. Minor avalanches redistribute debris, and the rhythm of water guides the sediment like an unseen hand. The peaks are no longer static monuments. They are living landscapes, constantly reshaped by forces both violent and gentle, by fire and ice working in tandem across time. Hydrothermal vents punctuate this choreography with bursts of heat and energy. From fissures in the ocean floor, superheated water laden with minerals escapes into the surrounding abyss. When it meets the cold currents of polar origin, a violent, swirling turbulence forms, lifting sediment, dispersing nutrients, and creating microhabitats for life forms that thrive in chemical richness and warmth. These vents, like fiery hearts within the icy expanse, sustain life in ways that would otherwise be impossible, offering energy and sustenance far from the sunlit surface. The currents then carry these gifts across great distances, distributing heat and nutrients to regions where survival depends upon their passage. The physical impact of these currents on the seabed is monumental. In areas where dense flows accelerate down slopes, they can trigger small-scale landslides, moving vast quantities of sediment and reshaping valleys in moments. Even where changes are subtle, The constant redistribution of material over centuries results in landscapes of extraordinary complexity. Ridges become sharper, channels deepen, and plains flatten or form fans. The motion of water, invisible and silent to the surface observer, wields a power greater than any terrestrial force, gradually molding the abyss into a dynamic yet coherent topography that reflects both violence and patience, chaos and order. Despite their invisibility, the currents are intimately tied to the ecological network of the deep. Nutrients transported along these flows nourish organisms far from their source, sustaining filter feeders, predators, and scavengers alike. Larvae and spores drift with the currents, colonizing distant regions and linking ecosystems across hundreds of kilometers. Even deep-sea corals and sponges rely on the subtle timing of these flows, their growth and reproduction synchronized with the rhythm of water movement. In this way, currents are the circulatory system of the abyss, invisible yet essential, shaping life as much as the terrain itself. The interplay between fire and ice, between hydrothermal activity and polar currents, highlights the duality of the deep Atlantic. Hot vents inject energy into a frozen, dark world, while cold currents transport density, oxygen, and nutrients across vast expanses. Together, they form zones of extraordinary activity where sediment, water, and life converge in a continuous, ever-changing mosaic. Peaks, valleys, and ridges both channel and resist these flows, guiding movement and concentrating energy in localized areas. In these zones, the hidden mountains and the invisible rivers interact, shaping a landscape that is both sculpted and alive, monumental yet intimate, permanent yet in flux. From a human perspective, the sheer scale of these forces is humbling. Submersibles and sonar reveal ridges taller than mountains on land, valleys deeper than any terrestrial canyon, and flows powerful enough to move sediments across hundreds of kilometers. Yet even with advanced technology, much of this process remains invisible, known only through inference and careful observation. The ocean conceals its secrets beneath darkness and pressure, allowing glimpses only through persistent exploration. Every discovery reveals the delicate balance of fire and ice, the subtlety of currents that shape landscapes and ecosystems alike, and the grandeur of a hidden world operating on scales that dwarf human comprehension. As Part 3 concludes, the currents of fire and ice emerge not only as sculptors of the abyss, but as lifelines, conveyors of energy, and hidden architects of the Atlantic. They shape the peaks and valleys, redistribute sediments, and sustain fragile ecosystems. They link distant regions in an invisible web of movement, guiding the survival of life forms adapted to extremes of pressure, darkness, and flow. To witness these currents is to understand the duality of the deep, a world of calm on the surface and relentless energy beneath, where fire and ice dance together, molding landscapes, sustaining life, and perpetually redefining the hidden architecture of the abyss. The currents of the Atlantic are relentless, invisible rivers that shape the very soul of the abyss. Cold, dense waters from the polar regions snake along the ocean floor, hugging slopes, carving channels, and displacing sediment in their silent, unstoppable motion. Meanwhile, warmer currents from the tropics rise, weaving through mid-depths in languid, buoyant flows. When these forces converge, turbulence ignites, sediment clouds twist and swirl, and the seabed is reshaped imperceptibly, yet inexorably. The hidden peaks, valleys, and plains of the abyss respond, their contours subtly altered, their ridges sharpened, their valleys deepened. Fire and ice, heat and cold, violence and patience. They are forces that coexist, colliding and merging in a continuous symphony of motion. In this ever-shifting landscape, life finds its rhythm. Tiny organisms drift within the flows, carried hundreds of kilometers from nutrient-rich zones to barren stretches, sustaining the fragile food web of the abyss. Crustaceans cling to crevices and ridges, timing their movements to avoid destructive surges, while predators follow the invisible highways of water, sensing currents and pressure with uncanny precision. Bioluminescent organisms illuminate the contours of hidden peaks, their fleeting glows tracing the eddies and swirls of flowing water. Here, survival is defined by a mastery of motion, an intimate knowledge of currents, and a delicate balance between stillness and turbulence. The peaks, the valleys, and the flows are inseparable in this dance of existence. The interaction between hydrothermal vents and icy currents adds drama and vitality to the abyssal landscape. Superheated water bursts from cracks in the ocean floor, laden with minerals and chemical energy, only to collide with cold, dense polar flows. The resulting turbulence lifts sediment, disperses nutrients, and forms microhabitats teeming with life. These zones, where fire meets ice, are the beating hearts of the deep Atlantic, sustaining organisms far from sunlight, offering warmth, sustenance, and refuge. The currents carry this life-giving energy outward, linking distant regions in a network invisible to the human eye, but vital to the survival of countless species. Peaks, slopes, and valleys guide and concentrate these flows, amplifying their power and sculpting the terrain in ways both subtle and dramatic. The impact of these currents on the seabed is monumental. Dense flows can trigger small-scale landslides, displacing tons of sediment and reshaping valleys in moments. Even where motion is slow and imperceptible, centuries of redistribution create landscapes of extraordinary complexity. Ridges become refined, channels deepen, sediment plains expand, and fan-shaped deposits spread across previously flat areas. The peaks, once formed by violent landslides, are constantly polished and reshaped by the patient, invisible hand of flowing water. The abyss is alive with motion, and even the most monumental structures exist in a state of perpetual flux. Their forms a testament to the ceaseless interplay of water, pressure, and geology. The current's influence extends beyond shaping the terrain. They are lifelines connecting disparate regions of the Atlantic. Nutrients, oxygen, and microscopic life are carried across vast distances, linking ecosystems hundreds of kilometers apart. Larvae drift in suspension, colonizing new areas, while filter feeders and predators follow the subtle cues of these invisible rivers. Peaks, valleys, and ridges act as both guides and barriers, channeling currents, concentrating energy, and creating localized zones of abundance. The hidden mountains and the flowing waters are inseparable, a complex system where motion, form, and life are entwined in patterns both intricate and profound. Even in their invisibility, the currents reveal the ocean's duality. The surface may appear calm, serene, and unchanging, yet beneath lies a world of perpetual motion, sculpted by forces beyond human perception. Fire and ice, heat and cold, density and buoyancy, all collide and coexist, shaping the terrain, distributing life, and sustaining the rhythms of the abyss. The mountains of the deep, formed in ancient cataclysms, are continually refined by these flows, reminding us that nothing in the ocean is static, nothing is permanent. Every ridge, every valley, every subtle undulation of sediment is a record of movement, an archive of energy, and a monument to the invisible forces that govern the deep. The currents are both architects and caretakers of the abyss. They sculpt landscapes, distribute nutrients, guide life, and maintain the delicate balance that allows fragile ecosystems to persist in total darkness. The peaks and valleys, the ridges and plains, are simultaneously shaped by and creators of these flows. In this continuous cycle of motion, creation, and destruction, the Atlantic is revealed as a living, breathing entity, a vast interconnected system of fire and ice, where energy and life are perpetually in motion, and where the invisible forces of the deep define the hidden architecture of the ocean. As Part 4 concludes, The currents of fire and ice stand revealed as the hidden heartbeat of the Atlantic. They are relentless yet precise, violent yet nurturing, invisible yet monumental. They carve valleys, sharpen ridges, sustain life, and link ecosystems across vast distances. They are the silent architects of the abyss, orchestrating an eternal dance of energy and motion, shaping a world that is both alien and intimate, terrifying and beautiful. To witness these currents is to understand the power of the unseen, the elegance of chaos, and the relentless rhythm of the deep, a pulse that shapes the hidden peaks, valleys, and plains of the Atlantic, and sustains life in a realm untouched by sunlight. Beneath the Atlantic's glimmering surface lies a realm untouched by sunlight, a domain of shadows where time moves differently and mystery reigns supreme. The abyss is a world defined by extreme pressure, so immense it crushes, temperatures so low that ice feels warm, and landscapes sculpted by forces both violent and patient. Peaks rise like silent sentinels, valleys plunge into unfathomable darkness, and currents of fire and ice sweep across the seabed, reshaping it in ways both subtle and catastrophic. Here, every ridge, every crevice, every sediment cloud carries a secret, a record of events that have unfolded for millions of years, hidden from human eyes and preserved in the unyielding depths. Explorers of the abyss soon realize that its secrets are not given freely. Technology allows glimpses, sonar maps reveal peaks and valleys, submersibles photograph debris fields, and cores of sediment capture layers of geological history. But each revelation uncovers more questions than answers. Valleys stretch farther than imagined, ridges rise higher than expected, and currents reveal patterns that defy conventional understanding. The deeper one probes, the more complex and interconnected the hidden world becomes. It is a place where ancient landslides have created mountains of mystery. Hydrothermal vents pulse like fiery hearts, and life thrives in fragile pockets, sustained by the invisible rhythm of currents and the nutrients they carry. The secrets of the abyss are written in stone, mud, and pressure. Sediment layers hold the memory of landslides, floods, and collapses, each stratum a page in a story millions of years old. Rocks embedded within these layers record collisions, fractures, and tectonic shifts, evidence of the immense energy that has shaped the Atlantic. Even the tiniest sediment grains are carriers of history, moving with currents, settling in valleys, and forming landscapes that are constantly rewritten. The peaks, valleys, and plains are thus both monuments and manuscripts, their contours and compositions chronicling a narrative of creation, destruction, and endurance that is unfolded in darkness and silence. Life in the abyss is intimately tied to these secrets. Bioluminescent organisms trace the contours of ridges and valleys, revealing hidden crevices and sediment patterns. Crustaceans cling to slopes shaped by ancient landslides. Filter feeders drift along currents that carry nutrients from distant sources, and predators navigate shadowed canyons with uncanny precision. Every organism is a reader and participant in the ocean's hidden story, responding to the subtle cues of terrain, current, and chemical composition. The mountains and valleys are not mere landscapes. They are living, breathing frameworks that dictate where life can flourish, hide, and evolve in a world without light. The abyss conceals more than life and landscape. It holds evidence of catastrophic events that have shaped the ocean itself. Massive landslides, triggered by tectonic shifts or sediment overloads, have sculpted peaks and carved valleys in moments, leaving behind debris fields that span kilometers. Currents then redistribute this material, subtly reshaping terrain over centuries. Hydrothermal vents inject heat and chemicals into cold, dark waters, creating dynamic, localized ecosystems that persist far from the sun's reach. Each secret is layered upon another, an interwoven web of geology, biology, and chemistry that reveals a system both delicate and extraordinary, resilient and volatile. Some of the most enigmatic secrets lie hidden in the crevices and valleys of the peaks. Here, sediment has accumulated undisturbed for millennia, forming microcosms of chemical and geological history. Tiny organisms inhabit these niches, some unknown to science, surviving on minute nutrient flows and energy derived from chemical reactions rather than sunlight. Debris from landslides creates shelters and habitats, while currents deliver sustenance and remove waste. These hidden pockets are laboratories of evolution, where life adapts to extreme pressure, perpetual darkness, and constant motion, revealing the astonishing ingenuity of organisms in one of Earth's harshest environments. Explorations have uncovered the subtle traces of these interactions. Sediment cores reveal layers of organic matter and minerals, each stratum a testament to past events. Sonar mapping uncovers channels carved by long-forgotten currents, ridges formed in violent landslides, and plains shaped by centuries of sediment redistribution. Life responds in concert. Organisms cluster in nutrient zones, bioluminescent flickers trace hidden pathways, and predators exploit the subtle contours of peaks and valleys to ambush prey. The abyss is not static. It is a constantly evolving narrative, written in water, stone, and life, whose secrets demand patience, precision, and reverence to interpret. Even the currents themselves are part of the mystery. Invisible rivers of water, carrying heat, minerals, and nutrients, connect distant regions, linking ecosystems across hundreds of kilometers. They shape sediment deposits, influence the distribution of life, and sculpt the hidden topography of peaks and valleys. Hydrothermal vents, peaks formed by ancient landslides, and sediment plains interact with these flows, producing dynamic zones of transformation where the secrets of the abyss are revealed only through careful observation. The ocean is a living archive, and its currents are the pages, turning slowly in darkness, recording the past while shaping the future. As Part 1 draws to a close, the secrets of the abyss are revealed as layers of mystery waiting to be uncovered. Mountains born in catastrophe, valleys deepened by centuries of currents, hydrothermal vents pulsing with energy, and life clinging to every crevice. These are the hidden forces that define the Atlantic's depths. They are monuments of history, laboratories of evolution, and dynamic systems of creation and destruction. To witness the abyss is to confront the unknown, to read the ocean's secret language, and to understand that beneath the tranquil surface lies a world of immense power, hidden beauty, and eternal mystery, a realm that continues to shape the earth in silence. The abyss is a repository of ancient forces, a silent witness to the violent and patient shaping of the Atlantic over millions of years. Peaks born of colossal landslides rise from the ocean floor, their jagged edges and fractured surfaces carrying the scars of immense energy. Valleys plunge into darkness so profound that no sunlight has ever touched them, forming corridors of shadow where sediment flows and currents converge in an eternal, unseen dance. Each crevice, each ridge, each undulating plain is a record, a story of power and time encoded in stone and mud, waiting for those who dare to interpret the language of the deep. Hydrothermal vents punctuate these landscapes like fiery anomalies in a frozen, alien world. From fissures in the seabed, superheated water erupts, carrying minerals and chemical energy that sustain unique ecosystems. When these plumes meet the cold currents that snake across the abyss, turbulence forms, lifting sediment and redistributing nutrients across previously barren areas. Life responds in astonishing ways. Clusters of filter feeders, crustaceans, and bioluminescent organisms thrive in these transient oases, their existence dictated by the subtle interplay of fire and ice, heat and cold, chemical energy, and the currents that disperse it. The secrets of the abyss are alive, dynamic, and intertwined with every pulse of the ocean. The peaks themselves are both archives and architects. Formed in moments of catastrophic landslides, They continue to evolve under the influence of currents, sediment flows, and minor shifts in tectonic plates. Valleys deepen, ridges sharpen, and debris fields are subtly rearranged, a process so gradual that centuries pass before the changes become evident. These hidden mountains, monumental yet delicate, are laboratories of transformation, sculpted by invisible forces and inhabited by organisms uniquely adapted to their complex topography. Every layer of sediment, every fractured rock, tells a story of creation, destruction, and endurance that is unfolded in total darkness. Explorers and scientists attempting to uncover these secrets confront the immense scale and complexity of the abyss. Sonar mapping reveals peaks taller than mountains on land, valleys deeper than any canyon, and plains that stretch for kilometers. Submersibles capture images of jagged ridges, twisted debris, and intricate patterns of sediment deposition. Yet, for every secret uncovered, new mysteries emerge. Hidden channels, unexpected currents, and previously unknown species remind us that the abyss is far from understood, and that even the most advanced technology provides only a glimpse into its vast and intricate network of forces. Life in these hidden depths reveals astonishing resilience. Bioluminescent organisms trace the contours of peaks and valleys, casting ephemeral light across sediment clouds and shadowed cliffs. Crustaceans cling to slopes and ridges, timing their movements to avoid destructive currents, while predators navigate tunnels and crevices with an acute sensitivity to water flow. Larvae drift along currents, colonizing new areas, linking ecosystems across hundreds of kilometers. Even in the absence of sunlight, life thrives by reading the subtle cues of terrain, pressure, and flow, a testament to the adaptability of organisms in one of Earth's most extreme and enigmatic environments. The currents themselves are both carriers and sculptors, silently shaping the abyss over centuries. Dense, cold flows descend from the poles, while warmer waters rise and meander, their interactions forming turbulence that lifts and redistributes sediment. Micro-landslides occur along slopes and ridges, moving material, altering habitats, and subtly reshaping peaks and valleys. Over long periods, these forces refine the landscapes created by ancient catastrophes, producing complex terrain where every fold, every crevice, every depression reflects the interplay of power, persistence, and subtle motion. The currents are the unseen narrators of the abyss, moving through the hidden mountains and valleys, chronicling time and shaping life. Hydrothermal activity adds an element of unpredictability to this system. Superheated water, rich in minerals, emerges from vents, interacting with sediment, cold currents, and nearby peaks to create localized zones of extraordinary productivity. Here, chemical energy substitutes for sunlight, sustaining communities of organisms that exist nowhere else. Sediments around vents record these interactions, capturing moments of turbulence, mineral deposition, and biological activity. The abyss is both laboratory and archive, a place where forces of heat, cold, pressure, and flow intersect to preserve the secrets of the Atlantic in real time. The abyss is also a theater of scale beyond human comprehension. Peaks rise thousands of meters above the seabed, valleys plunge into unfathomable darkness, and currents span vast distances, connecting distant ecosystems in a continuous web of movement and life. Events that would be cataclysmic on land, the collapse of a massive ridge, a sudden landslide, the eruption of a vent occur in silence, unseen and largely undisturbed, reshaping the landscape in ways that are subtle yet profound. The Atlantic's hidden mountains are both witnesses and participants, responding to forces that are immense, patient, and invisible, maintaining a delicate balance between creation and destruction. As Part 2 draws to a close, the secrets of the abyss reveal themselves as intertwined narratives of geology, life, and energy. Mountains formed by landslides, valleys carved by time and current, hydrothermal vents pulsing with chemical energy, and organisms adapted to extremes. These elements are not isolated but interconnected, forming a dynamic, evolving system. To explore the abyss is to read a story written in sediment, stone, and motion, to witness life sculpted by forces both violent and patient, and to confront a world of beauty, mystery, and power hidden beneath the surface of the Atlantic, waiting for those who dare to venture into its darkness. The deeper one ventures into the abyss, the more the Atlantic reveals itself as a world of contradictions. Immense peaks rise like monuments formed in moments of catastrophic landslides, yet centuries of currents and sediment flows have refined their edges with patient precision. Valleys descend into darkness so profound that no light penetrates, yet they teem with life, guided by the rhythms of water, nutrient flows, and chemical signals from hydrothermal vents. This is a realm where violence and patience coexist, where destruction creates new habitats, and where the interplay of fire and ice drives both the geology and the biology of the deep. Hydrothermal vents, scattered across the seabed like fiery beacons, punctuate this frozen, sunless world. Superheated water, rich in minerals and chemical energy, gushes from the Earth's interior, colliding with cold, dense currents that sweep across the abyss. Turbulence forms, sediment is lifted, and nutrients are distributed across valleys and plains, feeding life far from the summit's surface. Filter feeders cling to ridges and crevices, small crustaceans navigate the turbulent flows, and bioluminescent organisms illuminate their surroundings, tracing the contours of peaks and valleys in fleeting glimmers of light. Life thrives in these zones of energy, sustained by forces invisible yet powerful. The peaks themselves are records of both ancient catastrophe and ongoing transformation. Landslides that occurred millennia ago left behind mountains of jagged ridges and debris fields, monuments to the immense energy released in moments of collapse. Yet these structures are never static. Currents carve channels, redistribute sediment, and polish ridges. Micro-landslides occur along slopes. Debris fields shift imperceptibly over decades. The abyss is a place of continuous change, where every ridge, every valley, every sediment layer is both archive and canvas, recording the history of the ocean while being reshaped in real time by the ceaseless forces of fire, ice, and motion. Life in the abyss is intimately tied to these shifting landscapes. Organisms cling to peaks, shelter in valleys, and drift with currents that carry nutrients from distant regions. Some species time their reproductive cycles with the rhythms of water flow, releasing larvae when currents will carry them to new habitats. Predators sense pressure gradients and subtle changes in the water, navigating channels and valleys with extraordinary precision. Bioluminescent organisms trace the contours of the terrain, providing fleeting glimpses of the hidden architecture of the seabed. The abyss is a living system where geology, currents, and life are inseparable, and where every interaction contributes to the ongoing story of survival and adaptation in one of Earth's most extreme environments. The currents themselves act as invisible architects, sculpting valleys, shaping ridges, and transporting sediments across vast distances. Cold, dense flows from polar regions descend along slopes, carrying fine sediment that deepens valleys and alters habitats. Warmer, ascending currents interact with these flows, creating turbulence that lifts material, redistributes nutrients, and connects distant ecosystems. Micro-landslides triggered by these flows subtly reshape peaks and ridges, while sediment deposition forms new plains and fans. Over centuries, these processes produce landscapes of extraordinary complexity, where every fold and groove reflects the hidden rhythm of the Atlantic. Hydrothermal vents add an element of unpredictability to this system. Their plumes of mineral-rich superheated water interact with cold currents, creating pockets of turbulence and nutrient enrichment. Organisms cluster in these zones, forming ecosystems sustained entirely by chemical energy. Sediment cores collected near vents reveal layers of deposition, chemical reactions, and biological activity, offering a window into the forces that drive life in the absence of sunlight. Here, fire and ice converge, shaping both the physical terrain and the living communities that depend upon it, demonstrating the interdependence of energy, life, and motion in the abyss. The scale of the abyss is incomprehensible. Peaks rise thousands of meters above the seabed, valleys plunge deeper than any terrestrial canyon, and currents span hundreds of kilometers, linking ecosystems across vast distances. Events that would devastate life on land, massive landslides, sudden surges of sediment, eruptions of hydrothermal vents occur silently and invisibly in the ocean's depths, reshaping the landscape while allowing life to adapt and persist. The Atlantic's hidden mountains and valleys are both monuments and laboratories, offering insight into processes that operate on a scale and time span beyond human perception. As Part 3 concludes, the secrets of the abyss emerge as an intricate interplay of geology, currents, and life. Mountains formed by ancient landslides are continuously refined by water and sediment. Hydrothermal vents pulse with chemical energy, sustaining fragile ecosystems. Currents sculpt valleys and ridges while transporting nutrients and organisms across vast distances. The abyss is not static. It is a living, breathing system, a dynamic archive of creation, destruction, and adaptation. To venture into its depths is to witness the hidden architecture of the Atlantic, to read the language of sediment and motion, and to encounter a world of beauty, mystery, and power that has endured for millions of years in silence and shadow.